It's recording.
It's recording. So Sky Pirates are going to be playing an awesome semi-co-op game today. Semi-co-op is a game where all players can lose, but only one player can win. So let's talk about the basic premise is that you've got your Rocketeers and your airships and your flags to be flying around the board, placing your flags on resource islands anywhere around the board. And while you're doing that, other people are coming around and attacking you, and the Raideran, these dark ships here, are attempting to take over their own thing. The Raideran are actually controlled by the game itself, and if at any point they get a seventh piece on the board, then the Raideran win and all players lose. But let's get a little more specifics. So the goal of the game is to have a pirate empire worth 6 points. Each flag that you have on the board is worth 1 point. That's the flags here. Flags are placed throughout your turn. You'll notice though that each player only has 5 flags. So in order to win, you'll also need a medal worth 1 point. You get medals by fighting against the Raideran. You'll get the board set up. The Raideran get placed on the highest region tile with highest numbered region tile without noblesse. You'll set them up here. But let's get into some of the particulars about the rules. So, on your turn, you have 3 phases that you can take. They can be taken in any order, but you must take all of the actions within that phase completely before moving on to the next one. So you can move, place, and attack. Again, you can mix those up in any order, but you can't move, attack, and then place again. You have to do it all in one go. So let's talk about each phase individually. So the first phase is place. We've got some guys out. During the place phase, you can take any one of your pieces that you have in your pile of your color, and you can place it on the board. There's very specific rules on where you can place your units. Rocketeers, the sort of foot soldiers that you'll use to colonize the board, can only be placed on flags that you already have on the board, which is convenient because every player starts with a Rocketeer and a flag on the board. So if you want to place a Rocketeer, you put a Rocketeer down. That's your one place. Or you can place an airship. Airships have to be placed in the air spaces around the board. You notice there's these little gaps in the board. That's the air spaces above and below the various region tiles that we'll be playing on. But you can place a airship in an air space that's adjacent to one of the flags you control. So this guy's got a flag there, so he can put an airship there. Easy enough. And then lastly, if you want to place a flag, flags are a little harder to place. Again, these are what you need in order to win the game. Each flag is worth 1 point. You can only place a flag on a resource island, and you can only place a flag on a resource island if you already have a Rocketeer there. So you send your Rocketeer over to a resource island, 1, 2, and then you can place a flag if you have a Rocketeer there already, and there's nothing else already occupying that space. If somebody else has a Rocketeer there, or another flag there, or anything else along those lines, then you cannot place a flag. You need to have an empty space, and there can be no opposing pieces. So again, even though this is slightly cooperative, all the players are working together so we don't all lose together, we need to make sure that, well, only one player can win. So still definitely opponents. But that's placing. Again, you can place any one piece out of your 3 different types: Rocketeers, airships, and flags. Next, so after the place phase, not after, but you take the place phase, you can take another phase, is the movement phase. You can move all of your pieces on the board. Well, just the Rocketeers and the airships. Flags don't move, they don't have feet. But you can move your Rocketeers and your airships. Your Rocketeers each move 2 spaces, and your airships move 1 space. Your Rocketeers can fly around however you want. They can move along these lines along the board. We call them jet streams because they're Rocketeers and thus have jetpacks. So they go 1, 2. They can also go onto your airship. That's convenient because when the airships move, they take all your Rocketeers with them. So you can cover a lot more ground that way. One of the important things you'll see When you move an airship, they move one space from one airspace to another airspace. Those are connected if you follow along the lines between the region tiles. So like this space is connected to this space, this space, this space, and this space. One of the important things is that there's only airspaces where there's at least two region tiles connecting against each other. So here's a region tile, here's a region tile. Between those two is an airspace, so you can move your airship here. There's no two region tiles out here. The next one over is definitely this one over here. You can go right around those corners. As long as you follow the one edge of a region tile, you can get to the next one. So these two are considered adjacent for airspaces. So you move your airship right along the side there. Important thing is you can move on to your airships with your Rocketeers. You can move on to other people's airships. So let's say I've got a dude over here. I can move right onto that person's airship. They can't stop me. But whenever they move around, I move with them, a little bit at their mercy. But it can be convenient, especially if we need to get a bunch of people all together in one space to fight against the Raidaren. One of the other important things is that you can't have two airships on the same airspace, unless, of course, you can move it off. It can't end its turn on the same space as another piece. All other pieces, so Rocketeers and flags, you can pile those guys up as tall as you want. You can have every Rocketeer on the same space. However, with airships, because they're so bulky, can't fit on the same space, but they can go through each other. Now, I said that the airships only move one space per turn, so you obviously, if you move it there, you can't leave it there, you'd have to move it off, and you can only move it off if you move it again, which airships only move once, unless you have a steam token, but I'll get to those in a second. So, important, you can't move your airships onto a space, but you can move it through if somehow you get 2 movement points. You can do the same thing with Raidaren, the enemy guys. You can move through them, you can't stay on them. Obelisks here will prevent movement on the region tile that they're on, but we'll get more to those guys in a second, because they're bad news. Alright, so movement. Rocketeers move twice, airships move once. One important thing is that you'll notice that there's 2 tiles that are face down. If you move a Rocketeer onto the face down tile, you get to flip it up, and you can place it whatever orientation you want. This one's no good because all the orientations are the same, but some of them will be very convenient if you have them in a certain location or another location. Usually you want to do that to your advantage. Yeah, that's pretty much movement then. Placing, movement, and then attacking. So attacking is fairly straightforward. On your turn, you can attack as many spaces as you can. You select the space that you want to attack. So say I want to attack here, and I've got some guys that are on adjacent spaces. So those are the ones that are connected by those jet streams. This airspace is connected to this resource island, that flag, that one that I want to attack. This one isn't, though. You'll notice. Maybe not, maybe the camera's too far out, but there's no direct line from this airship to that. But I can move my guys off here, and let's say I want to attack this space. When you attack, you start a skirmish, and any player that has nearby pieces, which is either on the space, connected to the space, or on airships connected to the space, can commit pieces to either the offense or the defense of the combat. So I want to attack this space. I've got 2 Rocketeers on a nearby space. So I attack and I commit those 2 Rocketeers and I say I'm attacking you with 2. There's also a green airship over here. That's not mine, but some other player could choose to aid to my attack, or they could aid to the defense. And I'd say, hey, listen, I want you to help me with the attack. And he says, no, but that's okay. So I'm still attacking with 2. And one important thing is all the players need to commit to the offense before players commit to the defense. This means that offensive players may have to spend more in order to overcome the defense, and the defensive players say, why would I spend anything if you're going to take it anyway? In this case, this guy commits 1 to the defense. So if I'm successful, I've got 2 offense, he's got 1 defense. The offense is greater than the defense, then I get to discard that piece. If the green airship, though, decides to defend that space, so I've got 2, he defends with 1 for the flag and then 1 for the airship, then he has 2, I have 2, defenders win on ties, so that's no good. In addition, you'll notice that there are various colored flags on the board. When you attack, for every flag you have on a red space, you add 1 to every offense you participate in. So if I had a flag over here on that spark space, that red space, I'll go over what the different spaces are in a moment. But so I attack there, I've got 1, 2, and I've got a flag over here, that's 3. So he defends with 1, and then the guy adds his airship in, that's 2. That's still not enough, so I get to discard 1 piece on the space that I attacked. If there were 2 pieces there, I get to choose which one. Important to note, though, is you can attack airships, but you can never discard airships. There's a special rule for that. We won't get to now, but that's in the advanced rules. But for the most part, in the base game, you're never able to discard an airship. But if you attack an airship, other nearby airships can participate in that combat as well. So if, say, he had a dude over... If I had a dude over here, and I want to attack that airship, I've got 1, 2 guys next to that airship, 1 guy over here on this airship, and I could have green help me. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I attack this airship. He defends with 1, 2. And in the mention of these spark islands, which if I have 1 on a red island, I increase my offense by 1. If I have 1 on a brown island, that's scrap. That adds for every defense I participate in. So if purple, say, has a defensive island over here, then he defends with 1, 2, and 1, 2, and then the third over here, and I attack with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If green will help me, more than enough to take care of that 1 Rocketeer on that space. Combat works a little differently when you fight against these guys, the big, bad, horrible Raidaren. They are out to kill and murder everyone. So notably, they are kind of difficult to kill. So when you attack one of these guys, they have the obelisk, which you can attack as long as you're anywhere adjacent to the whole region tile. And so say we get a bunch of guys over here, some red guys, some green guys, and we say, alright, we're going to commit to this offense. And I've got 1, 2 guys over here, and they've got 1, 2 guys over there, and we're all adjacent to the region tile. So that means that we can all participate in that attack. So that's 4. The obelisk, so the square pieces that these guys place down, are worth 4 defense, 1 for every obelisk on the board, plus the Raidaren dice. So say we attack that, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys, and he's got 1. That's 1, so we commit 4 to the offense. He commits 1 to the defense. Plus, oh shit! He rolled a 4, which means that he got 1 plus the die roll. He defends with 5. Again, this is the NPC race. This is the one that everyone's trying to kill collectively. So since we only had 4 and he had 5, then we are unsuccessful in our attack. We don't lose anything for a failed attack. We tried and we failed and we didn't get the thing that we want, but we aren't punished for it. But so that obelisk still stands. If we wanted to try and take, or well, let's say he had rolled a 2 though. So we attacked with 4. He defends with 1 for the obelisk. And 2 plus the dice, that means that we've got more, so we discard that. Every player that participates in a combat against an obelisk, and if the obelisk is destroyed, hey, that's great news for everybody, because everybody gets a power token. That's the little orange stars here. Power tokens are awesome, but we'll get to more of those in a second. But when you attack and you destroy one of those guys, everybody gets a power token, which is good, unless, of course, you might give somebody else something you don't want. One of the important things is when you attack a Raidaren, you don't have to accept help from everybody. You can pick and choose who you want to have and who you want to ally with and who you want to help actually attack those things. Because sometimes you might go in to attack and you're giving the guy the last point he needs to win the game. But that's attacking obelisk. What if we want to attack a Raidaren warship? Well, that's no good at all, because they defend with 1 for every player. So this is a 4-player game, so 4 plus 1 for every Raidaren warship. 2, 3, 4. So that's 8 plus 1 for every obelisk on the board. So that's 10 plus the dice, which means that it's going to be a minimum of 4, 8, 10, between 11 and 14 when we try and attack them. That's a tall order. But fortunately, we don't have to attack the Raydarren warships because the obelisks are so much easier. But we'll get to why you want to attack these guys in a moment. Because if you destroy a warship, those buggers are tough. But if you manage to destroy it, everyone that participated in that combat gets a medal. Power tokens are great. If you get 4 of them, you can trade them in for a medal. They also give you other nice things. But medals are what you really want. Each medal that you get is worth 1 victory point. Remember how I said you only have 5 flags that you can place on the board, and each flag is worth 1 point. And if you get all 5 flags out, you've got 5 points, but that's not enough. You need 6 points in order to win. So if you get a medal, that's your 6th point. Or maybe you get 2 medals and you only need to have 4 flags on the board. Or maybe you guys doing really well and you get 3 medals and you only need 3 flags on the board. You gotta be careful though, because these medals, once you have them, you can't lose them. So if you see the guy over there and he's got 2 medals, you have to destroy all of his flags pretty much constantly, because all he needs to do is just each turn place down a new flag, and he's that much closer to winning the game. Because flags are very vulnerable. Flags can be destroyed. But the medals is where it's at, because once you have a medal, it's a permanent point. You can't lose it. Nobody can take it from you. That's fantastic. I'm going to take a sip of tea now. A little sugar. Got a little riled up. It's exciting though. Go have some tea too, you're fine. Alright, so we talked about your 3 phases on your turn. You place something on the board. Doesn't matter what it is, you can be your Rocketeers or your airships or your flags. Or, once you've done that, once you've placed, you can move all of your pieces on the board. All your Rocketeers move 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And your airships all move 1 space. I haven't got an airship, but if I had an airship, I'd get to move it like this. 1. So that's movement. Then you can attack. Usually, like, I attack this space. I've got some dudes around that guy, and I want to attack you for that. And if I have more dudes than you, and more spark flags, so the ones on the red spaces, then that's even better. Because I've got, let's say I attack this space, and I've got a spark flag over here, and I attack with these 2 guys. Plus the spark flags, that's 3, and you, green guy, will help me attack that guy, but that's 1, and he's got a flag and a Rocketeer. He doesn't have an airship though, that's too far away, but he's got his own scrap flag over here, so that adds, and you'll be building your empires and trying to defend your pieces, and that's how attacking works. But now let's talk about some of the other finer points of the game. And then of course you're attacking the Raydarren, and you're getting power tokens and medals, and great fun. When you place down a flag, so you get the 1 point. That's important. You put your flag down and you get 1 point. But you also get a benefit based on what kind of island you've placed it on. There's only 3 types of islands. The other ones are spaces. There's steam islands. And at the beginning of your turn, for every steam island you've got a flag on, you get a steam token. They all generate a little bit of steam, and you get to keep those for your turn. So if I have two flags on steam islands, I'd get 2 steam tokens. You can use those steam tokens at any point on your turn to move any one of your pieces 1 space. Again, I mentioned that if you want to move your airship through another person's airship, you can do that, but you need to use at least 1 steam token in order to be able to do that. So you move 1, and then you're like, before the end of my turn, I spend another steam token, and I move this over here. One of the important things about steam tokens is that they're all discarded at the end of your turn. Steam is kind of hard to hold on to because it's all gaseous and evaporating. So they all evaporate at the end of your turn. There's also only 4 of them. So you can only have 4 at a time, but you can do a lot of things with them. Move them around, move your guys around, get them into position, and you don't have to do it during your movement phase. So you could attack and move your guys, and then you could place something, and then you could use your steam tokens to move again, which can get you into a better position later on. So that's steam flags. You also have scrap flags. Scrap flags, I mentioned before, they help you with defense. Every time you're attacked, or you participate in a combat, and you commit one of your Rocketeers, you can also add your scrap flags to every defense of a skirmish that you participate in. So normally flags only defend themselves for 1, But if you have another scrap flag over here and they attack your flag over there, then it defends with 2. One for the flag and then one for the scrap. And if they attack a scrap flag directly, the flag defends itself with 1, and then the scrap island also defends itself with 1. So these guys by themselves are worth 2. Every combat you participate in, it's great. Especially since each Rocketeer can only participate in 1 combat. So these guys add a lot. Especially if you attack multiple times in your turn. The spark flags, the red ones, those ones add 1 point to every offense. So they're the opposite of the scrap flags. So you can use those for offense, which is really good because if you get a bunch of them, you can use them to try and take out the Raidarian by yourself. Get those sweet, sweet power tokens and medals without having to share them with anyone. And that's what you need because you want to get your points to get out ahead. And that's important. Also, each flag, in addition to giving you just points for having them, also has a special repurpose benefit. This is a steampunk game. You tear everything apart and you use all the parts to use something else. That's amazing. So each one has a special ability. If you discard a steam flag, well, you get all 4 steam tokens. If you've already used your tokens in your turn, you get them back. Again, there's only 4 of those, so you want to make sure that you don't sacrifice your flag unless you've run out of steam tokens and done all your movement already. If you sacrifice a scrap flag, you can discard that, you get an additional place. So you can place a Rocketeer down, or an airship down, or a flag. If, for example, like you had a Rocketeer here, and you move them over to the steam flag, and say you really wanted the steam flag, and the scrap flag's not really helping you out because nobody's attacking you, and you don't really need that defense so much, you sacrifice that steam flag, you get an additional place, you can put it right down on a steam island. So now you've got movement, which is fantastic. You can also do that and place another Rocketeer or an airship down. Maybe you need that 1 extra point of attack, and you need to have it somewhere convenient. So you take off that scrap flag and you put it down, and you get an additional Rocketeer that can immediately start helping you in attacking, the buggers on the other side of the table, or the Raidarian. Those guys, you'll need every point of offense to try and stave off the horror that is the Raidarian. And then, lastly, very important, is the spark flags. Those ones are good because oftentimes you'll decide you really need to get more attacks. So if you sacrifice a spark flag, you get to make another attack using Rocketeers you've already used. Everybody gets to add Rocketeers into a combat even if they've already been used this turn, which is important because if you wanted to make an attack and you failed, you could then sacrifice that and make another attack. And what's really important is that it's not just a regular attack. As you sacrifice that, you get to make another attack, but you also get additional 3 points towards the offense of that attack. So say you're attacking a dude and you guys are evenly matched, and you decide you attack for whatever it is, but you sacrifice that flag, and you attack him again, and you get an additional +3. Which is really important. Say you're attacking a obelisk, and you've got 1 more than the obelisk is worth out there, and you attack, but he just rolls 1 more than you, so he ties you up, and you can't destroy that obelisk. But you've got all the guys already there, so you're like, guys, let's make another go at it. And you sacrifice a spark flag, which means you get another attack. Just 1 attack, and you get +3 to it. So that means that you get a second attempt to try and get that out, which is probably much better because now you've got the +3 to try and take that obelisk out. I'll let you do the math on that later. It's good. One of the important things is you can sacrifice as many flags as you want, but again, if you sacrifice the steam flag, you only get the 4 steam tokens, so you can't sacrifice a bunch of them and get 8. You'd have to sacrifice 1, get the 4 steam tokens, use them all, sacrifice another 1, get the steam tokens back. Again, with the spark flag, is you can sacrifice it, you get another attack at +3, but if you sacrificed another spark flag, you get another attack at +3. You wouldn't be able to add them together to get 1 attack +6. It's only 1 attack +3, even if you sacrifice 2, but that can still be good, because you need to make several attempts at various points throughout the game. And that's flags. That's the basics of flags. Other important thing, let's see, not the steam tokens, the power tokens. So I mentioned these guys earlier, is that if you manage to participate in a combat that gets rid of an obelisk, you get one of these shiny power tokens. Power tokens are great. They're probably the easiest way to try and win the game. And winning the game is important because you're playing a game against other players and you don't want them to win, now do you? So, when you attack a obelisk and you discard it, everybody that participates in that combat gets a power token. Power tokens can be spent one of 3 ways. Power token can be spent just like a steam token, and you can move an additional person 1 extra space. One of the important things is that these don't go away. Once you have them, you keep them, but then you spend them and then they go away, which is, I guess, a little bit confusing. But they aren't discarded at the end of your turn. You can just keep them and then spend them. So you can spend them and move an extra dude 1 space. And that'll be critical at some points, where you need that extra guy to be in 1 extra place to do a thing that you really need him to do. You can also spend these to add to either side of a combat, a skirmish in combat. So say I'm attacking this guy, he defends with 1, I attack with 1. I can choose to add a power token to that offense, and now I'm attacking him with 1 plus 1 is 2. I get rid of the steam token. One of the important things, again, I mentioned that when you attack, all of the people that commit to the offense need to commit their offense first, and then people can commit to defense. So you say, I attack you with 1, and he defends with 1, and I say, I'm not going to use my power token. And he says, well, I'm going to use my power token and keep my guy. At that point, I can't then throw my extra power token on top of that to try and, outbid him. Offense needs to commit first. They have an advantage. Defense has the advantage of not necessarily having to spend their power tokens if they don't need to. It's not complicated. It's just offense goes first, then defense. That's just the way it goes. But that's all rubbish, because what you really want to do is hold on to your power tokens as long as you can, because when you get 4 of them, so you've got 3 on this token and 1 on this token, or if I get just 4 1 tokens, however you get 4, you can trade those power tokens in for a medal. When we talked about medals before, is that they're that 1 permanent point, that once you have them, you don't ever have to get rid of them. And that means that once you have 1, you just need 5 flags on the board, or if you have 2, you only need 4 flags on the board, so on and so forth, because they're worth 1 point, and the goal of the game is to get 6 points. Again, pay close attention that you don't need to get rid of the Rhydaran at any point, you just need to outrace them to 6 points, because once you have 6 points, you're probably powerful enough that you can probably take them out no problem. So that's just what you need to do. More tea, I think. Yep, so we talked about the 3 phases, 1, 2, 3, move, place, and attack, or attack, move, and place, however order you want to put them in. We talked about flags, and you can discard them for super bonuses, or you can keep them down and you get the 1 point, and you get a special bonus. Remember, you can sacrifice a flag, you get a great bonus, but then you don't have the point on the board. But the bonus is really good, and usually really important in trying to make sure that somebody else doesn't win the game, or don't make sure that the Rhydaran don't win the game. Let's talk about the Rhydaran now. So you do all that stuff on your turn. You start with a starting player, you go around, it's my turn, then it's your turn, then it's your turn, then it's your turn. And we all take a turn. And after we all take a turn, then the Rhydaran take their turn. The Rhydaran take a turn in 2 parts, and only 2 parts. First thing that they do is they move. And you'll notice that there's a few different Rhydaran pieces on the board. There's the Rhydaran warships. These are the horrible bad guys. These are the flying nightmares. These are the stuff of whatever the opposite of legend is. I guess bad legend. Yeah, bad legend stuff. Anyway, and then there's the obelisks, and that's what they're putting down. They're the equivalent of flags. They're putting down obelisks, because if they get 7 obelisks down, then they win, and all of us lose, and that's bad news. There's also one key important piece, that's the Doombringer token. That's this guy here. Think of it as the Silver Surfer for the Rhydaran. This guy just kind of floats out. He doesn't do anything. They can't influence him. We can't attack him. He just kind of sits there. He doesn't influence us. He's just there to tell us that the Rhydaran are going to move here next. So the first thing that the Rhydaran do, their 2-part turn, is that you move the Rhydaran that's furthest from the Doombringer token. Let's see, so this one, there's the Doombringer token. 1, 2, 3. This Rhydaran piece is 3 pieces away. This one is 1 space away. This one's 1, 2, 1, 2. So this one is the one that's furthest away. So we remove that one from the board, and we take it and we put it down where the Doombringer token is. We pick the Doombringer up and we leave that there. There we go. That's the movement phase. They go up, they move on to the Doombringer token. The Doombringer token is going to hang around for a while. It's just going to sit for a second, because we move on to the next phase of the Rhydaran turn, which is very important, is that they're going to attack. That's the Rhydaran turn, is that they move and then they attack. You may not be able to see because I don't know how crap the camera is, but there's 4 symbols around the outside of the board, and we have this 4-sided dice. So after they move, the one that moves will attack, and you'll roll the four-sided dice. And the symbol that corresponds to the symbol on the dice that you rolled, in this case a 4, and in this case also a 4, they then attack the region tile that is in that direction. So let's see what we've got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to attack this space. So that corresponds to the direction. When they attack, just like their defense, they attack with a strength of 1 for every warship, every player, and every obelisk, plus the dice. Important, this is the one key difference, is that the dice, the Raidarian dice roll, is always the last thing that you add to the combat. So they'll attack, and then we defend, or try our best anyway. Usually doesn't end well. We can throw our power tokens and all that sort of stuff in. We have to try and defend it as best we can. And then they roll this power token, so they roll the Raidarian dice. And that might be a huge power boost, and we threw some power tokens in there, all for nothing. For the most part, the Raidarian will just kind of have their run of things, but that's okay. We can clean up the obelisk that they lay down later. Because when they attack, if they attack with greater offense than we defend with, then they put an obelisk on the board. That's not the end of the world. They just place one obelisk on the board. So in this case, they attacked with a power of 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 4 players. That's 8, plus 1 for every obelisk, that's 9, and we've got one guy here, and one guy here, and one guy here, because they target the resource tile, this whole tile, collectively. They attack this whole space, so all of these guys are close enough to defend. We defend with 1, 2, 3. 3. Do we have any scrap islands? If we had one, say, over here, that's 4. What were they taking? Oh, right, 9. For the most part, unless you have everybody participating in the defense of an attack, you're well and truly screwed. So you put an obelisk down. But again, I mentioned, that's not the end of the world. One of the important things to notice is that once you place an obelisk down, all the pieces that are on that region tile, they stay there. But they become trapped under the horrible storm and nightmare world that this obelisk has created. So this region tile is sort of locked down. All the pieces on that tile can't move, they can't attack, they can't be attacked, they can't be removed for any reason. They don't generate points, they don't generate bonuses. They're functionally non-existent, but you'll get to keep them on the board because at any point you come through and you get that attack that obelisk. So say we move these guys over here, and you'd be like, all right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 points against that obelisk. Hey, that's not too bad. It defends with 2 plus the dice roll. That's a 50-50 shot. So if you destroy that obelisk, then these guys come right back. And then you can move them around again, which is great. You just need to make sure that you don't get something horrible trapped at a critical moment. So don't throw all your guys on this space when the Raidarian are coming and they might attack this space. And maybe you have enough to defend, but if you don't, then all of your dudes are on this space, and ooh, that's bad news for everyone involved. Because as they continue and they place an obelisk, and say on the next turn they go through and they place another obelisk, one of the important things is that if they get out on the outskirts of the board, so say they're all out here, and they move and they attack, and there's no region tile where they can attack. Say the 3 and the 4 are painted off into nothingness, and you roll the dice and they're like, oh, it attacks 4, and 4 is off this way. That means that they don't attack this turn, that they're such bad shots. They've got this giant cannon that can basically decimate us no matter what we do, but they don't always aim it at us. They're sometimes just shooting it at space birds up in space. Steampunk themes, though, so clockwork birds and clockwork space. Anyway, so they move and then they attack, and if at any point they've got 6 obelisks out on the board, and then they attack again, and they would place a 7th obelisk on the board, all players lose, and the Raidarian win, and that's particularly bad news. Other important thing to note is if they attack a space and it already has an obelisk on it, then they just put another obelisk down, which can be good, because that means that they're more concentrated, and we don't have a bunch of our guys trapped. It's also harder because now maybe the obelisks are a little bit harder to get to. What's important, though, is that the obelisks don't help each other. Likewise, the warships don't help with the obelisks. So say I attack the obelisk here, there's 2 obelisks on that space. You just choose which one you want to attack. So I want to attack this one, or I want to attack this one. They don't matter, they're equal the same. And each one defends with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus the dice roll. They don't accumulate and create some horrible doom obelisks. You can just take them down one by one. But if you've got a guy trapped, and he's underneath 2 obelisks, you gotta get rid of both obelisks before you're able to free him. So you gotta make sure that you don't get piled underneath a lot of this horrible doom obelisk crap, because that can be bad news for everyone, because you don't want your dudes trapped. You don't really want your opponent's dudes trapped, because you'll probably need them to help clean up again the Rhydaran. But again, you just got to make sure that you don't have too many obelisks on the board, because they don't get too powerful unless they've got a lot of obelisks on the board, and you'll mostly do fine. Again, likely, if it comes to a hard point, you'll just have to sacrifice one of your spark flags. You get that extra +3, and you do that, and then say they roll, and they're really good at rolling sometimes, so they get that 4. But on the next turn, your guys are still there, and the next guy can choose to do the exact same thing, and he moves in a few extra guys down there, and you guys turn out all right. But back to the Rhydaran turn. So they move, and then they attack. You'll notice that all of the region tiles have a number on them, and that's what corresponds to the Doombringer token, because the Doombringer token gets placed back on the board. And remember, when the Rhydaran move, they just move on to the Doombringer token. So we're kind of going to just point out where the Rhydaran will move next. And they always move towards the region tile with the highest number that doesn't already have an obelisk on it. So on this board, 30 is the highest number right here. But it's got an obelisk on it, so that one doesn't count. We've got 29, though. 29 is good. So the Doombringer token is going to try and get as close to that as possible. But it's important to remember that it must be placed in an airspace adjacent to an existing warship. So if, say, the warships are all over here, say they're all over here, and the 29's over here, they're just going to try and get as close as possible. That you want to place this Doombringer token on any space that's just one space closer. It can be any space. But you'll notice here that 29's over here, there's 3 warships. They can go in any one of those 3 airspaces and still get closer. They want to get as close as possible. So this one is 1, 2 away, this one is 1, 2 away, this one's 1, 2, 3 away, or no, 1, 2, 3, yeah, 1, 2 away. So these are all equally close, so it can go in either one. When there's a choice, at any point if there's a choice to be made concerning the Rhydaran, then the starting player gets to decide. The starting player, that's great, you get a slight advantage there, because say Green's over here and he's got his dudes, and you're like, I could put it over here because that means that the Rhydaran will then attack me. More than likely, though, they'll want to put it over here where this guy and all of his opponents are hanging out, because, hey, you want to make sure that the Rhydaran are screwing with your opponents and not you. But maybe, that if they get an obelisk on there and trap these like 10 pieces that are all ready to attack, maybe that's bad news. Maybe you want to put it in the middle of the road then. The starting player will have to decide how much of a dick he wants to be, or whether he wants to just act for himself, or whether he thinks that he might be able to take care of the Rhydaran on his own. A lot of decisions to be made there. So that's the basics. They move onto the obelisk. They then attack, and then they move on to the Doombringer, and then they attack, and then you put the Doombringer back, and you put it back as close as possible to the highest region tile without an obelisk on it, 29, and that goes there. Starting player gets to choose. After the Rhydaran take their turn, again, they just move, and then they attack. That's all they do. That's all they do every turn. After they do that, then you'll determine a new starting player. Now that's exciting, because we mentioned before that anytime the Rhydaran choose, the starting player gets to choose where they go. That's a lot of power for one player to have throughout the course of the game. So this actually rotates. Well, not quite rotates, it goes to the player who's losing. Let's talk about what that means at the moment. Is that each player has a rank. Your rank is determined by the number of flags that you have on the board, plus the number of power tokens that you have, plus the number of medals. So say I have 4 flags out on the board, and I have 3 power tokens and 1 medal. So that's 4 plus 3, 7, plus 1, 8. So my rank is 8. And if another player, he's got 1 flag on the board and 1 power token, he's a rank of 2. The starting player, after the Rhydaran take their turn, goes to the player with the lowest rank. which gives that player a little bit of an advantage. It's great to be the player with the starting player because you have all that extra power. It's also a mark of shame though, because that means that you're kind of the player in last. But like in Mario Kart, if you've got the blue shell, nobody really wants to mess with you. But that's important. One of the other things is, say two players are tied with a rank. So if he's got 2 and he's got 2, that means the power token doesn't change. That if there's a tie, it stays with whoever has it. It's important to note that occasionally something bad will happen, and the player that has, say a player has a rank of 5, so he's got, say, just 5 flags on the board, no medals, no power tokens, and 2 other players are tied for 2. Normally it would go to one or the other of them, but since they're tied, then it doesn't move, so the guy with 5 keeps it. Ooh, that's bad. So players want to make sure that they try and maybe sacrifice flags, maybe focus on flags, to try and make sure that they get the power token away from the guy with all the power. That's usually not too much of a problem. Usually the player that's in last is going to hang on to that power token. But you can be very sneaky. You can be very sneaky indeed. Important to note is that in determining starting player, a medal and a power token count the same. So if you hang on, say you want to keep all your power tokens and just use them at the end. So say you've got like 10 power tokens and you haven't changed them in for a medal, then your rank is 10 plus whatever you got on the board. Nobody's going to be close to that. But that's okay, because you got your power tokens and you've got a little bit of liquidity. But say on your next turn you trade some of those power tokens away for a medal. That means that you just lowered your rank by 3 points. That means that even if you're kind of doing fairly well for yourself, that you can trade those in for a medal, and you're that much closer to getting the starting player token. And that, again, we mentioned, gives you a lot of power. So you're going through and you're playing a game, and let's go through the general overview. You've got your guys on the board, and you're placing them, and you're moving them, and you're attacking with them. There's 3 phases. But you can also use your steam tokens and your power tokens to move them more and attack a little bit more. The flags that are on the board give you 1 point, but they also give you a special bonus depending on what kind of flag or what kind of island the flag is placed on. And you're doing that, and you're also sacrificing them to get big bonuses, to make like big changes anywhere around the board. The steam flag, you get lots of movement. The spark flag, you get lots of attack, and the scrap flag, the brown one, you get a little bit more utility. Say you desperately need an airship, you just pull up your flag and be like, this is an airship now, and you throw it out into the air and it becomes an airship because they're magic like that. And you're doing that, and then the Raidarians are taking their turn, and they move and they attack, and they're probably going to murder someone horribly, but that's okay because they just put down an obelisk, and you can fly right back in and take out that obelisk, and if you take out those obelisks, you get the power tokens, and eventually maybe you get everybody bounded together, and you get a lot of spark flags around the board, and you sacrifice them, and you get the special 3+3 bonus, and maybe you take out a warship or 2, and once you take out a warship, that makes every other warship a little less powerful. Which is great, because when you do that, then it just drastically lowers them and they're less of a threat. But if they're less of a threat and it's not your turn, then that means that the other guys have a little bit of an advantage. So you're playing, and you want to make sure that maybe the Raidarian are weak enough that they're not going to take over, but they're not so weak that the other players are going to capitalize on that. Or maybe you wait and you try and convince somebody to do a little bit early so that you can capitalize on their mistake. There's a lot of fun back and forth trying to mitigate this horrible Doom Force, but also, really, it turns out the monster is the players, because they're really just using these guys to try and play off of each other. But if you play off each other too much, then the Raidarian get an upper hand, and then they become unstoppable, and you have this very frustrating, like, oh my god, guys, there's 6 obelisks on the board. How do we let this happen? And you say, it's your fault, no, it's your fault, and then you attack each other, and then they put the 7th, and then they win, and you lose. That's pretty much the game at the moment. So thank you for your interest, and we're really excited to move this on out. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a shout out or an email or in the comments section if I put this on YouTube, which I guess is the only place I probably would put this. So comments, those are probably down there, or like or share, but you don't need to because this is a tutorial video and nobody cares that much. But it's going up on Facebook, or maybe on WordPress or other stuff. But at this moment, that's about it. I think that's it. That's it. All right. So tea time for me, and I appreciate you joining me on this little excursion into Sky Pirate territory and fighting against the horrible Doom Force that is the Raidarian. Tea time. Quiet time. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy the game. There's actually there's no more tea left. It's just sugar. Maybe I can lick the sugar out with my tongue. It's good sugar.